Denzel Washington is back as the avenging Good Samaritan Robert McCall. This time he teams up with his Man on Fire co-star Dakota Fanning playing CIA agent Emma Collins, as together they attempt to take down a cruel Italian crime syndicate. It's The Equalizer III. I'm Ronald Young Jr., and I'm leaving the theater. All right, this is Ronald, and I am leaving the theater after seeing The Equalizer III. The Equalizer III, directed by Antoin Fuqua, written by Richard Wenk, starring Denzel Washington, Dakota Fanning, Eugenio Mastrandrea, David Denman, Sonia Ammar, and Remo Girone. All right, so it's just me today. I am by myself. It's been a while. It's the end of summer. We're just starting to get into the September movies, which for me normally means that the quality goes down a little bit. If you notice around the season, December, like August is kind of a summer movie dumping ground, like specifically movies that are made for the summer that can't compete in the heat of the days of June and July. They dump those in August. And in September is kind of like a general dumping ground for movies that are just not quite good enough to be Oscars, but really have no other place to fit in. Another place you see that happening is like if you look around January, February, the movies aren't very good then either. January, February, kind of March, you get surprised in the spring, but typically you're either going to see a crowd pleaser in the summer or you're going to see like, you know, the tearjerkers, the dramatic masterpieces, all the Oscar films. Those are going to come out in the late fall, and then you get your Christmas movies, and now they got that second blockbuster season in Christmas. Now, I'm sure y'all are wondering, why aren't you reviewing the movie? Well, I'm saying all that to say, when I walked into this movie, The Equalizer 3, it is a second sequel, and it is coming out in September. Even though it's starring one of my favorite actors of all time, Denzel Washington, I did not have high expectations for this movie. I liked Equalizer 1 and Equalizer 2, and I like this brand of movie. I like this genre of movie, which is just old man takes on an entire city, or old man has a vendetta. This all started with Taken for me. This iteration of this started with Taken, and then you got John Wick, you got Nobody, there's so many different films that have come out like this. And of course, Denzel has his own, The Equalizer. And walking into this movie, I'm like, it's a second sequel. There's no reason it's going to be that good. This is a pretty good movie. This is a pretty good movie. Granted, I think it would be even better, probably a full star better, if I had watched this on my couch. But I did have to put on pants and they're shorts, but I had to come out and watch this in a theater, which it took some things away. So for those who don't know, The Equalizer, the whole premise of it is it's based on, I believe, either an 80s or 90s television show that used to come on USA, if I'm not mistaken. And this guy, somebody McCall, and that's the thing. He doesn't really... I didn't refresh myself on the first two movies, so walking into this one, he's going by an alias most of the movie, and I was like, what is this dude's name again? And I want to say it's Robert McCall, if I'm not mistaken, but he goes by Roberto the whole movie, but he never comes out and says Robert. So I'm like, y'all can Google it. You can look it up. It's not that hard. But he basically is a defender of the little guy. People who are being abused by do-badders, people that are not good. He is a do-gooder that does good on behalf of people who cannot defend themselves. He stands up for the little guy, and that's been the premise of the first two movies. This one is no different. He is on a mission to do something kind and ends up in Italy. Now, let me just tell you, I am learning now. There's a few movies and things that I watch where it's like, based on where it's set, I know I'm going to like it. New York City, Hawaii, And now I'm realizing Italy. If it's set like, and that's the thing, if I'm watching a movie and I'm like, this movie isn't very good, but they get some really good shots of Hawaii, that can elevate like a 2-star movie to like a 2.5-star movie, where I'm just like, I mean, I didn't hate it as much as I thought I was going to. Same thing with New York City. If they're showing like really good shots and all that, like, I'm like, wow, man, just some of the stuff, if they film it right, it could be there. Now, let me tell you, that is how I feel about this movie. For anyone who watched The White Lotus and saw those beautiful shots of Italy, they are doing the same thing here. At one point, and the thing is, the movie is very slow in a lot of parts, and I think that would take away from some folks. But when it builds up to the action that it's going, it's very satisfying. It's very satisfying. And let me tell you, in the parts that it is slow, for me, what made up for it was they'd be like, nothing is happening, but look at this beautiful coastline. And I'd be like, man, that is just, and they got me every single time with that. So I enjoyed that. I also enjoyed just watching Denzel just be on vacation, it seemed like at times, but then eventually have to clock in and do some work. Now, this movie is very violent, and they do not turn away from the gore. And like, there's a scene early in the film that just was cartoonishly violent. And I was watching, be like, ooh, Denzel, this is what we're doing. So yeah, that was, if you're squeamish, might not be for you. If you've seen the other Equalizers, it's no more violent than those. So if you've like, oh, I've already seen them, is this more? It's not. But if you haven't seen any of the Equalizers, maybe start with 1, see if you get through that. If you get through that, get to 2 and 3. And let me tell y'all, 1 and 2 are worth seeing. They really are, because he works at a hardware store in 1, if I'm not mistaken. I'm about to go watch the Equalizers right now. So all of that being said, this movie, I'm not dumb, okay? I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, man, this movie is out of this world or anything like that. But for me, sitting down the seat, I was like, it can't be worse than 3 stars. And it wasn't. It was not. I think this probably is around about a 3.5-star movie. With all of that being said, I think it's a 3.5-star movie, I think. And it's funny because I need to apologize to my sister, because I unexpectedly got this ticket and I could have brought her, but it was so last minute that I was unable to do it. And there's a part that happens in this movie that I know my family would be like, what? Because there's a very specific church hymn that while Denzel is murdering somebody, he starts singing. And as soon as he starts singing it, I kind of start singing along. It is like wild to watch. And as a matter of fact, as soon as he starts singing it, I was like, he can't be singing what I think he's singing. Then he sings another line of it, and I'm like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this. I'm like both smiling and feel a little uncomfortable at the same time. So yeah, all that being said, 3.5-star movie, worth seeing, especially when it comes to streaming. Settle in, watch it on a Sunday afternoon. You will not be disappointed. It will help with the Sunday scaries. With all of that being said, Leaving the Theater is a production of OhitsBigRon Studios. Alexandra Ketch of Bias Studios mixes the show. Thank you, Alex. Show art from Heather Wilder. Theme music by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. For more information about The Equalizer 3, check out our show notes. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, or Threads at OhitsBigRon. That's at OhitsBigRon. You can find out more about this show and other OhitsBigRon Studios shows by following us on Instagram at OhitsBigRon Studios and on Twitter at OhitsBigRonStew. That's STEW. Leaving the Theater will be back soon. Thanks for listening.